Hi, thanks for joining this session. I hope you enjoy it. And mostly we are going to focus to talk about something more critical, more important that it should be happening in your heads when you are developing a game. And the first thing is how you are generating value effectively on your products, because usually you're going to find a lot of these cases during the on any game studio that they try to have some deals, and sadly they fail really bad, and they don't figure out how they are not making enough value with their products. So let me go quickly through a few stuff. So this is mostly the agenda about what we're going to talk. And just a quick introduction about me. I'm Marcelo Serres. I have been in the video game industry for 10 plus years. I have been working in more than 100 projects in different platforms, in different teams. I previously had my own video game company for 7 years. I have been providing consulting for Autodesk, for Unity, and different governments worldwide. And mostly, beside this, the most important thing that I want to share with you is I have been making a ton of mistakes. And through those mistakes, actually, is where most of the learning that I have been getting through. And the process of failing on some projects and being able to get back on your feet and trying to actually redirect the project and generate revenue for the project is something that it should be one of the most valuable skills in this industry when you are producing games, because at the end, it's not just getting some critical acclaim on the projects. Actually, you want to live well through on this industry. And something during all these years that has been puzzling me, it's how with this insane amount of talent and wonderful projects, how most of the indie developers and the small companies are struggling to survive in this industry. Actually, something, if you just go directly to the numbers, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's an insanely huge industry. So I decided a few years ago not just to move in my career with my own interest, and also I wanted to give a hand to my fellow developers and designers in how they can succeed to their projects. So that's in part why I moved to the current company where I'm as a director of technology and game production, and I'm working really closely with the developers in helping them to co-producing, in funding their projects, and also in co-publishing some of those projects, and sharing my experience with them in order to succeed. So in case you want to know a little bit more about the company and the possibilities that we can work together on any project, we can have a few minutes after this presentation. So what's the problem that I plan to talk about today? Before actually talking the problem, one critical thing that I want to mention is I heard a few years ago that any talk, any session should be accomplished just one single thing. And it's keep resonating long and loud enough in your minds to make you question about the process that you are doing related to the topic. And I don't want to provide any answer or any tip by myself. It's just I want you to wonder and start analyze how you are developing or producing your own projects, and if it's efficiently at all. So I want to start with a minor earthquake to keep your attention, and I will say right away that I don't care about gameplay mechanics anymore while I'm producing games, and there is several other things that I care most, and I put gameplay mechanics at the bottom, and probably at this point, you will be wondering what the hell is this guy talking about. And probably you want to bar me and kick me out the stage. But let me explain a little bit what I'm trying to tell you. Obviously, as a gamer, I should say that gameplay mechanics, polish, and content should be the foundation on any given project. And that's right. But when you are trying to generate value and the end generate revenue for a project, for a commercial project, the core gameplay mechanics are not the foundation at all. There is several other things that you need to pay attention first if you want to proceed through the project successfully. So, and why I'm going to focus on talk about like a generic work, talking about features, it's because nothing, and I mean nothing, could be more erosive and expensive than trying to stack up new features over defined gameplay mechanics on any given project belatedly. So it's something that you need to be aware that it's not just having a nice core gameplay mechanic and in the end start figuring out, oh, we can stack multiplayer, we can put this feature, this other. That's actually the worst thing that you can do during the production. So given that potential problem, the first thing that you need to wonder when you are working on any project is how you are generating value through all your decisions, through the design, the planning, and then after the execution. So yes, always you start with a core gameplay mechanics. So usually you are going to try to expand this core, and if we try to define this as an area of value where you start with certain area and you want to expand it to a desired value, the problem is that, yeah, if you stretch the core gameplay a little bit too much, it's not effective at all, because at the end, on the free-to-play, at least on the free-to-play market, it's not having a real impact on the revenue that you could generate on the end. And it's related to the retention. So I'm going to talk about those. So given this question, why you should be interested in how you can generate value effectively? Most of you could say, no, I had my own plan, but I'm trying to just provide my 5 cents from my experience. So you should care because predictability. When I mean about predictability, it's because I'm not talking about just having a roadmap with milestone or something that you are trying to simple plan ahead to work with a client or with your own team. And usually it's one of the things that most of the teams are failure miserably during the development. The predictability is mostly related in the way you are trying to manage your risk as a small team, a small company, and it's directly related more that you can see further on the project, on any decision that you can take, less the risk is going to be on the project. So how that is going to be related with the game design or the planning on any game? So right now we have 2 components, value and risk. How we can effectively work on that to try to improve. So we already defined that the problem has 2 major components, who is value and who is risk. And it's always when you are trying to publish your game by yourself and reach the final user or player, so a B2C business, or when you are trying to make a publishing deal with a publisher, it will be a B2B business. It's about how much value you are able to bring to the table, and in the same time, what is the real cost of that? So actually the risk. So that's why those 2 components should be always on a dashboard in your office or in any point with high visibility when you are working on the project. So to make this a little bit more simpler to explain in this case, I'm going to provide an example with cats, and I love cats, so that's why it's pretty arbitrary. So let's take a cat as an example. Let's define a really simple core mechanic for this cat, just walking. So we have a cat that can walk, and where we can go from that point to make it more interesting, how we can generate some sort of interaction, something that adds value to a potential product, because we are trying in the end getting user, getting retention. So you have usually two major dimensions where you can start growing the development of a product. One, it could go through the mechanics, and you can still continue adding mechanics to the game, so the cat can jump, roll, hunting, or whatever other thing you want to add. And usually that's one of the major risks that you can suffer on any given project. And in the other side is activities, and it's how you are going to put in use the mechanics that you are designing or defining since the beginning of the project. So usually the route needs to be mostly for the activities than the mechanics. And I'm going to explain a little bit more on the following slides. So either way, if you have some sort of initial mechanics defined, and then after you have some sort of activities or features, we are talking really generic for now. I'm going to explain more. You still need to have something to trigger those activities through the game mechanics. And in this case, for the sake of the example, we are going to use create a playground for the cat. So what you are going to have using all these components for any given project is like a happy cat wanting more. And in other words, you are creating retention. But in the way that you are creating retention in this simple example, you started with the core mechanic and then defined some activities and trying to assemble everything on the run. And that's usually one of the major risks on any project, because you don't have a solid plan about where you are heading out. And because you don't know that exactly, you don't know the number that you are going to need on budget at the end of the project. So that is leaving a huge backdoor for any project that you can lose money at the end. So given that, let's try to do something really simple on this example. Let's remove the cat, and suppose that now we still have those activities that we designed for the cat, we still have the playground, but let's try to imagine to put any other random animal on there to try to get to use those settings that we already defined. So for some of them, yeah, there is some similarities that could fit exactly or could fit on some percentage on the playground there. So that's actually give us a tip on most of the stuff that you can define on a top strategy is going to help you to simplify some of the process. So let me go here. So usually what you have been doing for some of the project, most of the project, and we have been seeing around more than 70% of the developers that we talk on any event are presenting projects that have been defined with a bottom-up strategy. And usually bottom-up strategy starts with a core gameplay mechanics, and it's by numbers even 3 times more expensive than using a top-down strategy. The big difference between both is in one, you start with the core gameplay mechanics, and in the other one, even if you have an idea of a core gameplay mechanics, you start designing the feature set. And why you are starting with the feature set? Because you are trying to define first some sort of pipeline on features that you can reuse between similar projects on any given time, because you don't need to develop, I don't know, 2 racing games on the same quarter, but yes, you can create a racing game and reuse part of what you developed back then at the end of the year, for example. So it's going to simplify and it's going to optimize a lot the process inside the company. And moving from the top-down strategy to the bottom-up is going to increase the risk and it's going to increase the cost. So given the problem that we defined before, more than a proposal, what we saw internally, and because we have studios in Santiago in Chile, in Seoul, in South Korea, and we just opened up an office in Shanghai, in China, we have been applying this type of strategy to try to be more effective on our budget. What we are doing is defining a feature set on the top of initial simple core game mechanic for different games, and we are trying to overlapping those features to try to foster the same gameplay mechanics through some similar activities. So it's like the graphics that is on the right, and as much as you can overlap is how optimized you can, how well you can optimize your budget. So given this, the other thing that is going to happen is going to allow you to plan ahead a full set of features, not to be developed right away, it could be in the future, but through the feature it's a lot easier, more than the core gameplay mechanics, to understand in the free-to-play market which target user you are trying to reach. So you're going to find out through the numbers that most of the features apply for more than one group. And that will help you a lot to define exactly what you need to produce during the development of the project and what not. Because then again, those is one of the major issues that you find in any small or medium team, that they develop tons of wonderful things, but most of those things are not adding value to the project at all. So when they try to sit down and negotiate with us or any other company, they think they have a way better product to negotiate, and sadly the product looks great, probably it could achieve some critical acclaim, but it's not something that you can make too much money at all. So at the end, for any publisher, it's not something that they will be interested at all to take it. So at the end, trying to apply this strategy, it leads us to save between 30 and 60% on the cost of development on the different studios. And if you do the math, and I can tell you that some projects $500,000, some other $2 million, you can see how much we can save. And mostly, it's not just saving to keep it under our bed. It's we can reuse it in some other projects. That's why we are always trying to optimize those costs. So let me explain quickly 2 examples of what we have been doing with this strategy. So most people don't know about, in the USA, the penitentiary system allows some of the inmates and these prisons to have their own tablet. And they have the tablet 24/7. They have plenty of time for playing. And they have their own digital store to buy content like music, movies, comic books, and since the last year, video games. So right now, we are the major publisher of content for those platforms in the United States. Even if the monthly active users are between 2 and 3 million, oscillates a lot, because yeah, people getting out on the prison and people getting in. And it has been proven for us really good business. But most important, there is some critical stuff about this platform that is obviously for legal stuff that needs to be totally offline. The devices are not too powerful. It's just a Cortex A9 with a Mali 400. So it's the typical Chinese tablet that you can find. So instead being able to take any wonderful game from other developers, we needed to start to develop our own games to try to get enough projects in. So after 7 months, we found out another issue, that we have a huge inventory of small games. And the question was, what we can do with those games, because those games are so simple, some of them, that our games are not going to work on a free-to-play market. They don't have a high production value to work as a premium games. So we decided to change our internal pipeline, and we worked something that I named the staged features. So what we are doing now is defining one specific type of game, and we divide it in 3 or more stages. So for the example on the right is like, for a racing game, we are going to create a major racing game on the 3rd stage that is going to have all the features that are going to ensure enough retention to release it or in Google Play or Android Store or any other public store. But in between, we are going to develop some minor games that are going to serve this offline platform in order to recoup part of the development cost, and also it's going to allow us to produce more effectively these projects. And the other example that I want to provide, this was a really small game from just 2 guys and 1 girl in Uruguay that we took for co-development. It's an active co-development. And as you can see, this is the first prototype that they made many years ago. And yeah, it's not too good at all. But something on this prototype back then caught our attention, and it was that even with this simple game, they really want to put a big focus on the features and not just the core gameplay mechanics. And that was ensuring to have a really good multiplayer that allows the players to play synchronically. So then after they continue working a little bit more on the game by themselves, we meet them in an event like 6 months after. We saw the project with some other progress. Still, the project at that point, personally, isn't good enough to be taken by a publisher because it will imply to invest a ton of money on the project. But then again, they still focused on the multiplayer and seeing how they can increase the retention through some features on the game. So finally, we invest on the game. We have been working with them for almost a year, and the game is pretty close to be finished. And you can see where you can invest a ton of more money on the project and put all the experience, how you can increase the production value. Actually, we invest not just in the game itself, we also invest on the IP. We are exploring what we can do in the animation industry. That's why we are located in LA and not in other place. And it has been a wonderful experience. And we have been trying to communicate this message with some other developers that at the end, it's not that we don't care about the gameplay mechanics. It's because there is some other things that provide value in the end to make a good business behind the games that you need to be aware when you are designing the game and you are on the planning stage of any project. Because usually when you try to make some changes belatedly on the project, it's too expensive. And if we need to jump in, probably we are going to need to put a ton of more money than we initially thought. And the problem is that you are not going to have the power to negotiate over that because you are not the ones who have all the money to say, no, I prefer to do this and that. So.
And sadly, at that point, we have to say thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. I think great job of showing us that getting the right features to go with that core gameplay is really important, and particularly making sure that we keep the simplicity. I think that's really, for me, one of the key areas. Keeping that simplicity is really vital. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you.